but we like to set our people free and just say, hey, just do your best to be a human, right? Solve their problem, educate them on what they do and don't have, and just be better than the last guy and close the deal. Don't let them off the phone.
Got questions, we bring the facts. From proven pros who walk the tracks. Business life, no smoke, just flames. Ask the experts, David Williams brings the game.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Andy Arter, your host today on another exciting episode of Ask the Experts, the podcast where we dive deep with top agents and entrepreneurs to spark real change in your agency, fuel growth, and share game-changing insights. And today we have a very, very special guest, Mr. Wyatt Mace. Wyatt is an absolute powerhouse entrepreneur, real estate developer, and leader of the largest Allstate agency in the history of New Mexico. From his headquarters in Farmington, Wyatt and his 17-person team manage nearly 15,000 personal line policies across 5 states, representing over $26 million in premium. Wyatt's entrepreneurial journey began in the health and fitness industry, which I can't wait to dive into with you, where he launched a thriving meal prep company before opening his first Allstate agency in 2018. The following year, he bought and later sold an independent mortgage brokerage, all while continuing to grow his insurance empire. Along the way, he's built and developed over 45 real estate doors and now coaches and consults with agents nationwide to help them optimize and scale their own agencies. He is a proud father and husband. He's got 3 girls, man, girl dad, respect to you.
Girl dad.
He's not building girl dad. But I know when you're not building companies, you're into travel, golfing, spending time with friends. And so I want to give you a very, very warm welcome to the show. And we're very excited to have you. So Wyatt, welcome.
Andy, I appreciate it, man. Super pumped to be here. Thanks for the intro, by the way. It makes me sound a lot cooler than at least I think that I am. But it's always fun to look back at the journey and just kind of recollect everything that we've done. So appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, you definitely deserve the intro. If you look at, everything that you've built, everything that you are building, and I think a lot of people as well are very impressed by, the age at which you've achieved this, right? Being able to come in at your age and have that entrepreneurial spirit. And one of the things I want to look into is like your DNA, right? Like the makeup of you and like where you come from and your roots. So
Sure.
With, $26 million agency, a large thriving team, can you kind of take us back to like, whether it's the meal prep days and the initial business ventures, or even prior to that? I'd love to hear a little bit about you before the insurance world, before we kind of jump in.
Sure. So man, like I told you before the show, I'm just going to kind of freestyle this. This isn't scripted in any way. I think, like we talked about, I love looking back and figuring out, those key points throughout the journey that were pivotal and kind of changed, the trajectory of what we're doing. So, without going too far back, you had mentioned the health and fitness industry. That's kind of what my passion was coming out of like those high school and early college days. You find yourself in a position where, my parents were successful growing up, provided a great life for my sister and I, and played sports and had a lot of friends and toys and traveled and just had a great childhood growing up. And so, but you want to, at least I did, you want to come into your own, right? You want to kind of figure out, okay, what's my passion? What am I good at? And, so for several years, 6-8 years, I just kind of chased what I was passionate about, what I had fun with and what I enjoyed doing, which was health and fitness. And so, had a stint for a while as a personal trainer. I actually got my nutrition license. So I was a licensed nutritionist, sold some supplements here and there. And then like you had mentioned, right before we had opened our first Allstate agency, my wife and I started a meal prep business. So, when you think of like your retail shopping mall, like walk in, grab the cooked meal that you throw in the microwave with all the macros and everything on it. We started one of those and had a ton of fun doing it, was passionate about it. And I like to tell this story. Coincidentally, just one day, one of the clients that we had that would buy from us pretty consistently came in one day, and I knew of her. I didn't know her personally very well. She was an Allstate agent, and she comes in and we're chit chatting about her food, and she says, "Hey, I'm retiring. Not to be, too blunt, but I'm retiring, and I think you'd be good at what I do. I'm an Allstate agent. You should consider looking into becoming an agent, buying my book." And at the time, we were like 6 or 8 months into, our meal prep journey. And I was like, look, I appreciate it. Thank you. But I've got my own business. We just started this. We just had our first daughter. Um, and I kind of scoffed it off and went home that night and was telling my wife, like, hey, talk to so and so. And she goes, you should at least talk to her, right? Like, what does it hurt? Why don't you just talk to her? It doesn't hurt anything. She was friends with my in-laws. And so a couple days go by, get in touch with her, we have a conversation, and one thing leads to another, and pretty soon they were bringing the field sales leader down from Albuquerque, about 2.5 hours away, to have a one-on-one meeting with me in my store. And so we did that, and prayed about it, thought about it, and took the leap. And so coincidentally, I tell people this a lot. It was certainly a God thing, right? About a week after that meeting, one thing that I had to figure out was how was I going to either run or sell or get rid of this meal prep business that we just started. It was just kind of taking off. Um, and again, it was a God thing. A few days later, another client, who is now the current owner, walked in and was like, "Hey, man, I'm just curious. Would you ever be interested in selling this place?" And I'm thinking, "There's no way. There's
Wow.
And so, we got to talking, and his girlfriend at the time, now his wife, was coming down she was moving into town, and was passionate about health and fitness and needed something to do. And they were looking for, something in that vertical. And so they purchased it from me, and we leveraged those funds and put it into the first Allstate agency. So all in
Jeez.
the span of about 5 months, it was a pretty wild journey. So
It sounds like it. It's great you kind of cut your teeth on the meal prep business, because like I'm sure that was a
yeah.
really healthy combination of operations and supplies and
Oh man,
execution, but at the same time, like very customer facing, got to deal with sales, customer service.
very much so.
Yeah, it's like you built your own internship basically.
Yeah, well, we were, the New Mexico Health Department wouldn't love to hear this, but we were the cooks, we were the salesmen, we were transporting the food, we were putting them together, we were doing the social media, and it was just my wife and I. And again, we literally had, she was pregnant for the first 5 to 6 months, and then we had our first daughter. And so, we were learning, right? We were having fun. It was our own thing. We worked 12, 15 hours a day. And, like you say, we learned a ton, right? Just all the way from operations to, again, the customer facing stuff, and how to, kind of build a brand and get our name out there and generate some activity and some hype around what we were doing. We thought we were bringing a cool product to the market, and we did. And it's grown into something much larger and much better and cooler than I had ever imagined with the new owners, which is awesome to see. But yeah, it was a great experience for sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you gave like glory to God on it, those God moments, and everything lines up in a way that is highly improbable, but completely likely with faith and through God's power. So that's amazing. And then I also
Very
picked up,
true.
I wrote down that your wife is awesome, because she was like, you
Oh
should
my
at
God.
least talk to her. So
Yeah. Oh, dude, we talk about that. You've got, you look back again, at all the stuff that we've been able to do with this opportunity, this Allstate opportunity, and other things. It hinges on that one conversation, right? And we talk about, like, what's the likelihood that I don't even bring that up that evening, right? That conversation up, and she doesn't encourage me to reach back out to her and have that conversation. It's just it seems like such a fragile moment. And but then again, you look back, and it's absolutely God's hand was involved in that, and that was the plan, right? And that was our journey. And so you take comfort in knowing that. But it is pretty wild to look back that, like, I wasn't going to have a conversation with her. She's like, "Oh, you should just do it," right? And so absolutely, my wife is awesome for that.
man, that's incredible. Well, just kind of an unscripted question that came to mind was that, in the work that I do, because spend a bunch of time consulting and working on recruiting, hiring, licensing, telemarketing, et cetera. I encounter a lot of agencies who have been out there for, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that are still just kind of stalled out, and they never got to the scale to be able to grow.
Sure.
Right. And there's a game to be played there. And then you look at somebody like you, new to the game, walked in from a completely different business model, but you came in and you scaled fast and effectively. And, you've maintained that growth as well, which is also, a huge, huge feat to maintain that and remain, in a position where you can be profitable enough to keep growing and not bankrupt yourself. There's an art to that for sure.
Sure.
And so I always kind of rack my brain on, like, what are the key differences between the agency who comes in and, you conservatively grow the book to 1 million. And then it's like, well, next 5 years is to 2 million. And then maybe by year 15, they're at 5 million, right?
Sure.
But then you see this hockey stick growth in an agency like yours. What would you attribute that to, aside from just intention and wanting to do it? Like, procedurally, what do you think are the key differences in an agency taking off like a rocket ship when they're new versus one that just kind of sits stagnant?
It's a great question. One that requires a lot of, kind of internal reflection and looking back at the journey as a whole. I think, to be quite honest, you can contribute it to a number of things, and I'll kind of go into that. But I think at its core, it's really just a passion for wanting to grow and a competitive nature. It's something that I think is inherent in a lot of ways. I see it in my daughters, right? One of them is extremely competitive, has to be the best, wants to be the best. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, right? And then I have another one that's just kind of more free spirited, doesn't really care, a little more laid back, right? And I envy that, but I also, again, I see part of me in my oldest daughter in that. And I think it just comes from, I grew up playing sports, competitively played baseball here locally, big baseball community here in northern New Mexico. And so, I had a lot of coaches that played a big role in that, and teammates and things like that. And so you translate that competitiveness and that competitive spirit to want to win and be the best, and that just innate drive and desire. I was able to translate that to the business segment and of my life, and it's been a fun journey. But I think it starts there, right? And then, I one thing that I can look back on and say confidently was that I was never afraid to learn, right? Never afraid to reach out to people, never afraid to ask, never afraid to put myself in a position where, I had to humble myself and say, hey, I don't know how to do this, right? That never felt off to me, it never felt odd. And I do see that, unfortunately, a lot. Um, in other agents, I don't know whether it's embarrassment or ego, or they're scared, right? They don't know what to say or how to ask. And I think, I encourage, anytime I get a chance, I encourage agents, like, look, reach out to anybody you see doing something that you want to do, reach out to, right? They were once in your shoes and they're happy to share, and they had somebody that passed it down from them, right? It's that knowledge ladder. And so I think that was a big part of it, no doubt.
That's huge. And I appreciate the way you framed it, by the way. I've heard for years, ask for help, but the way you frame it and the way you put it makes so much sense. Now, looking at a common trend in agencies that grow fast is that when they first start out, there's usually an obsession with sort of the micro experience of each and every customer, right? When you have your first 5 customers, you're like, sure, I'll drive out and I'll personally climb around your roof.
Been there.
But then you scale, and I've seen a lot of agencies, and just I think this is true for most business. You get to a size and a growth rate in which you can lose that magic and you become corporate. It becomes the corporate wall. When customers interact with you, it feels more like a corporation, less like a personal brand. I'm curious, with you scaling to nearly 15,000 policies, which is huge. Like, how do you guys still keep that like client-focused touch, that
Sure.
5-star, like, people love to do business with you? You're not just a machine, like, you're the best agency to work with, but how do you do that?
Sure. I would say it's something that we're still learning and figuring out. We've been able to grow. We've got a lot of happy clients, and just like every other agency, especially at our size, you've got a lot that didn't have a good experience. And so you look into those scenarios and situations and you try to figure out, okay, how do we correct that? I think, if I'm completely transparent and honest, I'm not customer facing in any capacity, and
Mhm.
so I'm not quite sure when that changed. But I had some friends, agents, mentors, whatever it may be, preaching that, hey, if you want to go from where you're at to where you want to be, you have to work. And we've heard this, right? You have to work on the business, not in the business. And
Yep.
so I took that at face value and applied it. The other thing too is, I think, just kind of our personal brand. I really try to build that through our team. If a customer asks me, like, even personal friends and family, a lot of times I'll pass those people on to my team, not because I refuse to work with them, not because I think I'm too good to work with them, but more so because I've spent so much time and energy and money and just effort putting into my people. And especially from a service perspective, they're much better at their job now than I am. I haven't been in their seat picking up 30, 40, 50 calls a day and filing claims and figuring out these nuanced situations, right? I haven't been there doing that. I've been doing that on the business side, the bigger picture business side, when it comes to hiring and training and recruiting and building systems and sales and stuff. But you know, um, again, I say it a lot. Like, if a customer reaches out to me, trust me, you're going to want to talk to my service team more than you're going to want to talk to me. They like to feel that, like, I'm the boss, my name's on the door, whatever it may be, that I have some involvement in that. And from time to time, don't get me wrong, I mean, they come to me with stuff for sure, but I think that brand of like the Mace agencies and that involvement, like you say, with our customers is my team. It's not me anymore.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That makes sense. Like that clicks for me hard that, hey, I invest a lot of time, energy, money, resource, care into my team. So they're a reflection of who we want to be as an organization. And I had a similar experience with my agent in Florida here. And, I reached out to him directly and he's done business with us as a company and know him well. And I was like, hey, we need a home policy. We need an auto policy. And, he sent me to one of his LSPs named Summer. And like, she was a perfect reflection of him. I could tell, like,
Awesome.
lots of time and money and investment into training her, lifting her up. So she comes in with his same bright light. So I love that. That makes complete sense. Now it'd be a little bit of an ADD conversation, so bear with me, but I got a lot of questions for you. So
yeah,
I want to kind of shift gears over into the idea that you're in, how many, 5 states?
5 states.
5 states. Okay. So I know there has to be agencies out there that have thought about doing that. And you've had it as almost a necessity for certain agencies. Like I've seen a lot of agents in, let's say, California over the past 3 years, open up a shop in Nevada or Oregon, or I've seen agents in New York or Jersey, move down and open up an agency or buy a book in Virginia, let's say.
Yeah.
But that's a different type of dynamic when you're talking about different states have different, rates, different dynamics.
Yeah.
Everything's different. So can you kind of just like walk through? I'm not looking for like hey, what's the one key? I'm more curious about your experience. Like, what were your expectations when you expanded to another state? What did you learn? And if somebody was looking to, do the same, like what would you want them to know before they go in and try to do something like that?
Man, I love that question. So I kind of have to take it back from the beginning. When the book that I had, very first book that I purchased, was very small at the time, and we essentially might as well have been scratch, right? We had a little bit of recurring revenue that was coming in to build off of. The one gold mine to that agency was, I mean, there was a few, but the really big gold mine with that one is geographically where we're located gave me access to the Four Corner states. So you think New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Arizona, right? And the book of business had clients in all 4 of those states. And so I stepped into that, whether it be luck or whatever, but I didn't know any different. And so, it gave us bigger access. Now, learning to take advantage of that access is a totally different conversation, and I can walk you through that. But and then a few years down the line, we purchased another. It was Allstate used to have what was called an ECP contract. It was a highly subsidized, like pure growth contract designed to get agents off the ground and to scale so they could cash flow, and then they come back down to earth and they join everybody else. And so there was a book of business, again, very, very, very small, just a handful of clients, to be honest, but it would allow us to get a hold of that contract. And it was in southern New Mexico, southeastern New Mexico, on the border of Texas. And so that was a big play, though. That was strategic, right? To give us access to another, I don't know, 20 million prospects, right, in the state of Texas. And so, so from a marketing perspective now, so to answer your question, the first question is we kind of walked into it, right? And I didn't know any differently. We were grandfathered into that. Huge blessing, gives us a ton of access. There was a point in time, and I can't point to it, that I realized the leverage that we had with that and the opportunity that we had with that when, like you say, you talk about agents that only have access to one state. Maybe it's a small population state, right? Maybe it's not a very competitive state for the carrier that we work for. And so, you don't really understand that until you get to a point where you're like, okay, now I've got a sales team to feed and we're trying to buy, internet leads, or we're sending mail or whatever. And in certain areas, you hit this kind of this cap where it's like, dang, we're running out of prospects to talk to, right? We'll never talk to everybody, but qualified people that are shopping, right? It boils down to shoppers. And so when we realized that, I think is when we took things up a notch and really put it into fifth gear. To maximize that opportunity. And so now, when you look back, it's a constant juggling act, I will say. To your point, you've got to manage several different markets, a lot of different RMPs, rate, right? Like the state of Texas collectively over the last I don't know, 2 years has taken over 100% rate when you stack them all up. And so, Colorado is another one. But shifting really, we really have to stay in touch with Allstate, right? And paying attention to where is Allstate wanting to grow and what are the green states. And so we'll pivot and shift our stuff there quickly. So all of our LSPs are licensed in all 5 states. It's as simple for them as a drop down, right? But they quote it, they'll run into stuff. And the quoting platform that we have guides us through a lot of that, right? In terms of like eligibility and, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that. We don't have to know it all. But my message there would be like, if you're an agent that you're growing and you're doing a lot of good things and you're near a border of your state in some capacity, and you have the ability to reach out to leadership and see if you can get access to another state, 100% do it, because it just elevates your agency to a completely different space. So.
Wow. No, that's very interesting. It's like you go into a blue ocean and there's all this low hanging fruit. I love what you said about like, there's only so many prospects at a time that are shopping insurance. So true.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, there's millions of people, but you're right. There's going to be a certain percentage of the population actually shopping. So that's incredibly smart. I love that. And as you kind of dive in and you start to look at like the different dynamics in these various states right now, and you're working with your team, did they have to be, I know you said there's like drop downs and stuff, but do they have to be sensitive or understand, or do you have to train them on I'll call it the emotional state of the customer? Like, and I'm going to give a quick example and break my own rule of not making a statement after a question, but just for context.
Sure.
When you're working within a certain state and there's a pain point with insurance, you gain a deep understanding of that, whether it be a rate increase, whether it be a competitor that is dropping the ball so you can swoop in and be the hero. Just those very specific kind of like market specific things that people use to like leverage on a sales call or get somebody to call them back. Have you found that your team needs to have access to or learn sort of the emotional dynamic of each and every separate state? Or is that like way overthinking this?
I would say it's probably somewhere in the middle. To be completely honest, I think having a very deep understanding of each market is something that we'll never have, similar to, or I guess relative to an agent that is only in like, we'll say one state, right? And so, and in a way, you could see that as a disadvantage, right? And it's not. Don't get me wrong. Like we're pleased with the opportunity that we have versus the alternative. But I think that when you're selling, my team, we buy leads, right? They come into the team, into the sales team, and they're quoting all day, every day, right? They may talk to 12 to 15 different prospects, or quote 12 to 15 different prospects. 3 maybe in Texas, 5 maybe in New Mexico, 2 maybe in Colorado, 1 maybe in Arizona, right? And we don't target all 5 all the time. So I think it's a volume thing, right? Like coming in as a new LSP, it can be a little overwhelming. We try to keep it, our targeting 2 to 3 states at a time. And it's the ones that are performing the best, from a acquisition perspective, ones that are going to yield the best ROI, like Texas and Colorado, very high premium states, right? So we try to keep our money spent in those states. But, more specifically to answer your question, I think that it's not as big of a deal as you may think. But there is some value to understanding, like, okay, if you're in, coastal Texas, right? These are going to be some limitations here. And this is going to be, we're probably going to have to add on some brokered policies with, Texas windstorm and hail, or, maybe you're in an area where there's a lot of floods, things like that. We have a lot of wildfires in Colorado. And so I think over time it becomes something that the team can leverage. It's not something that we train overly heavily. We'll go over RMPs. We'll go over, the guidelines, but we like to set our people free and just say, hey, just do your best to be a human, right? Solve their problem, educate them on what they do and don't have, and just be better than the last guy and close the deal. Don't let them off the phone. And so we like to think of it as like a bowling alley with the guardrails, right? And so stay within those lines of play, but it may look different from call to call. So
makes sense. Thank you for that. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing that stuck out to me that I was like, what is the fact that you've owned a mortgage brokerage? I think you had mentioned something like 45 doors. I've got some questions on it, but what is that? How did you get into that?
So the mortgage thing, that's a crazy journey. I'll keep that one brief, but to make a long story
Okay.
short, it was, so you got to think this is end of 2018. Okay. Um, and I was brand new in the industry. And so no leads were being purchased. I had no sales team. We had no processes for the most part, right? It was more or less just like, the hustle that you talked about, knocking on doors and hitting up people on Facebook and friends and family. And I had a lot of agents, again, the ones that I was reaching out to, talking about at that time. This was back when the model with Allstate was very different. It was 10% on renewals and it was 10% on new business. And so if you're at scale, it's great, right? A lot of agents are trying to get to scale, but Allstate wasn't heavily incentivizing the new business side. And so again, like there wasn't a lot of investment there. So I'm thinking, okay, got a lot of agents telling me you gotta meet up with mortgage brokers, you gotta meet up with realtors, you gotta create these relationships, which is still, that's still so important, right? That's always going to be something that we need to position ourselves into, when it comes to getting those referrals and things. But I saw it as a way to scale the Allstate agency. I saw it as a way to say, okay, look, there's only a handful of mortgage companies in town that I hear good things. It's very intertwined with the real estate community here. My parents are realtors, from a younger age, and it was always something I was interested in and wanted to get involved in some capacity, not necessarily as an agent, but just from an investment perspective.
Hmm.
And so, just talking to some people and figuring out some things. I had a buddy at the time that we were like, hey, he was in the police force looking for kind of a second thing, a business to build of his own. And I said, okay, hey, look, I've got a little bit of business. What am I trying to say? Experience. Got a little bit of scratch sitting aside that I can put into something, right? You have the time. Let's partner up and let's start this mortgage brokerage. So we reached out to a lot of different models and companies and things, found this franchise model called Motto Mortgage. It was a branch of Remax, actually started Motto Mortgage. I don't know if they're still involved with
Hmm.
each other, but anyway, it was something it was a relatively small investment up front. We had to get licensed, and then we got access to, like, think of like a big insurance aggregator. You join them, you get access to, their, their resources, I guess, their lenders, their banks. And
Hmm.
so there's a franchise model where we pay them a split on everything that we did, the business that we did, hired a few experienced loan officers, and let it rip. Um, and so I think we had talked about this when we were going back and forth before the show. But one of the reasons we got in and out of that industry so quickly is, number one, I realized pretty fast I was way in over my head. Right, I was very young. I was very green, and there's so much regulation and legalities and just involvement from third parties in the mortgage business. And it's
Hmm.
absolutely something that can be very lucrative if you do it the right way. But it was something that was taking way more time and energy from me that I wanted to. And so I decided to, he actually brought in another partner that bought my half out.
Hmm.
But that was the intention, right? Was, okay, every client that we have that goes through Motto gets a mortgage, we're going to send them over to my Allstate agency. Well, lack of due diligence there, right? You realize pretty quickly you can't force the client to go through your insurance company that you also own, right? You can recommend it. When you're talking, you're funding 4 to 5 deals a month. That's just not enough to keep the flow going. So
Hmm. Good
that's
point.
the story.
Yeah, that's interesting. 4 to 5 deals for the brokerage is maybe fantastic, but yeah, from a lead
Sure.
perspective for the agency, man, so interesting. Well, I was just curious, and thank you for going on a bunny trail with me to learn
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little bit more about that. One of the things you mentioned to me yesterday is that you also coach and consult with agents nationwide, and I am curious what the most common mistake is that you see agents making when they're trying to scale, and sort of what your first line of defense or recommendation is to help them overcome that.
Yeah, so, my strategy, and my clients know this, is that, I'm transparent, right? I coach through what I've done and what I know. And there's always more to learn. And I will tell them that, right? Like, I'm in the same boat as you, right? Like, I have mentors, I have people that I look to. And so I coach through experience. And so, the first phase when we bring on a new client, regardless of where they're at, is really just like diagnosis and triage, right? If we need it. And so most of the time, most agents, especially in our realm, in the Allstate realm, is, I got to write more new business. I got to hit my VC, right? Because I need to get those premium commissions to keep my cash flow, to keep my staff. So at first, it's like, okay, let's figure out what's the number one thing holding you back from hitting your VC and cash flowing like you need to. Some agents, they're not investing at all. Some are investing, but they're just kind of throwing, the pasta at the wall to see what sticks. Some don't really have any sales processes or a sales team. And so, it just kind of begins with, let's solve the biggest problem first, right? If you had to sit back and think as an agent, what's the biggest problem in front of me? What's the biggest rock in my way, in my path? And so we work together to kind of remove that. And what that does is that allows us together to make more sound decisions and put strategies, together. Because when you're focused on a problem, I think we've all been there in business, right? I certainly have, where you've got something in front of you that is preventing you, it's sucking up too much energy, right? A disproportionate amount of your thoughts and your actions, and your emotions, and it causes you to act, in a way that maybe you wouldn't if that was out of the way, right? And so it
Mm-hmm.
allows us to make more data driven decisions and just more sound business decisions versus following our emotions. And so we do that, we remove that, and then really it all surrounds, and there's a tactical approach that we take, but it all surrounds consistent quoting activity, right? Like if you think about it fundamentally, obviously you can't sell a policy if you don't quote a policy, right? So if the quote volume isn't there and it's not consistent, we've got to put a lot of energy and again time and money into making sure that that gets gets to a point where it's relatively consistent, and then it stays there. And then we can back into it from there, right? We can look back and analyze and figure out, okay, from this quote volume, what's the close rate? Are we closing business at the clip that we need to be writing what we need to be making what we need to be? So it just kind of starts from the quote volume and goes into so many other things.
Beautiful. And I want to, towards the end of the show, I'm definitely going to give out your information, give you a chance as well for those that, if you have room, right, for those that might want to link
Sure.
up with you and look into something like that
Appreciate
with you as
that.
well.
Yeah, love that. Absolutely.
Perfect. Now, one of the things I know to be true without even asking you is there has to be a certain degree of risk tolerance. And I'm sure you've had at least one, and I'm sure many more moments of risk that you've taken a calculated risk and it's either paid off or it hasn't. I'd
Sure.
love if you could maybe share, one risk that you took that
Mm,
looking back was a great decision and,
mm.
really helped you get where you are today. And then if you'd be willing to, I'd love to hear about a risk that totally fell flat or train wrecked and just the learning experience through that as well.
Interesting. Okay. Um, well, if I had to pick the most, the risk that I've taken with the best ROI, it was jumping into the Allstate opportunity, just kind of in general. But we've already talked about that, so I'll try to think of another scenario. I would say, for me, it was really, I mentioned that contract that we were able to get our hands on that was in southeastern New Mexico. I think, that was something that I had heard about. I didn't really understand it to an extent. Um,
Hmm.
and my FSL at the time had brought that opportunity to me and said, "Hey, look, you're one of the top agents in the state. I think this would go really well for you, right? You're young, you're hungry, you're trying to grow. Let's look at this opportunity and take advantage of it." And they have this tool where you plug in, kind of the cash flow and the projections of what you think you can write and the investment that you can put into the opportunity. And it was something that I thought, okay, there's no way I can't do this, right? A lot of unknown there, but that opportunity within about 6 months completely changed. You talk about that hockey stick growth, right? It completely changed our trajectory, because we put a lot of business, we hired a lot of people, spent a lot of money on marketing, way too much. Like we talk, it's funny, my management team and I will look back at that and think, gosh, dang, if only we knew what we know now, right? But you spent too much money and hired too many people, but it paid off in a lot of ways and provided us the cash flow to make the mistakes and make the decisions that we needed to look back on and learn from. You can't do it without, you got to fail forward, right? It's one of those things that people just get so scared to make the right or the wrong decision. And I think there's something we said about, sometimes just make one, right? It doesn't have to be calculated. It doesn't have to be, um, you don't have to think through it for 6 weeks type of a thing, right? If you make the wrong decision, it's a step closer to the right one. And so I think we just did that. And the nice part is that contract had a clock on it, and so it kind of forced us to just continue to keep moving, right? And so I would say that's probably the risk,
Hmm.
that paid off well. Let me think of one that didn't pay off all that well.
Yeah, and if you can't think of one, and no worries. I'm just, I'm a curious cat. So
Yeah, well, I think to be fair, there's a few things that have fallen flat, maybe didn't pan out the way that we wanted to. I haven't had anything that just totally crashed and burned and failed. I would say if my wife watches this, she's going to want me to mention this. The office building that we're in, that's a unique opportunity. I'll try to keep it brief, but that was a situation where it's a big building, right? It's like 8,400 square feet, 8,300 square feet, up on top of a hill. And I've seen this building for years and years and years. Love it. It was big. It was beautiful. I thought, dang, one day if I have the opportunity to buy that and put my office in there, I'm going to do it. And so the opportunity came up. The building was for sale. It was reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced to a point where I'm thinking, golly, this guy, why isn't this building selling? Right? It's the nicest building in town. Um, and why is it, why has it been on the market for so long? And so I came, talked to the guy. It was a situation where, it's a very unique building. The layout's very unique, and it's expensive. And so it requires a very specific type of buyer, specific type of tenant. The guy who owned it at the time was just looking to retire. It was kind of the one thing preventing him from retiring. It was a law firm. And so I took a big leap and kind of I we could afford it, right? We qualified to purchase the building, but it was something that was absolutely a big leap. And I thought at the time I was getting the building for a very large discount. And from like a rebuild perspective, we absolutely did. The market, however, doesn't necessarily support the rebuild on it. And so it's one of those. There's some blue sky involved, and my intention was to purchase it, make some renovations, put the team in here, and stick it up for sale in a couple of years and recoup that investment. It was more of an investment than it was our final resting place for the office. And so it just kind of became this bottleneck. It was a big expense, right? And we've made it work now. We've refinanced and we've decided to keep it, but I put it on the market and it didn't sell. And so we reduced and we reduced and just kind of learned the same lesson that the previous owner did, which was, again, it's a gorgeous building, very high in construction. It's beautiful, kind of an odd layout. And so it's going to take the right person at the right time. And that's what I was for him. And so our plan is at this point to stay here. I was going into this thinking we were going to make tons and tons of money by selling this place, and it never sold. So we refinanced, and here we are. So
That's some real life stuff right there for sure.
yeah,
No, really appreciate it. And I took some notes on when you were first talking about risk as well. And one really interesting thing about like the opportunity you mentioned on the border there was you're like, I heard about it, but I didn't fully understand it. But then that leader stepped in and kind of guided you through it and got you to wrap your head around it. So if you look at the makeup of that, it was like, first of all, you talked earlier about asking for help, and like, here is somebody who can advise you through that situation, and like, have you look past the risk to the opportunity. So that's something I picked up from it. It's like, if you're going to go in and take a risk, like find a counselor, a mentor, find somebody who can help give
absolutely,
you some perspective.
no doubt.
And I think that probably is a lot of what makes it risky in the first place. I didn't
Sure,
understand it. If you understood every aspect of every way it could go down to a T, it would be not a risk. It would just be an
absolutely,
action. So
yes. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's something to be said about, having a certain degree of, just being naive enough and crazy enough to say, okay, I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. And that's part of the journey of just being in business and entrepreneurship in general. Is the lessons come by doing. They don't come by, researching. And so yeah, it's something that you gotta put one foot in front of the other, and you'll look back, right? Like kind of like we're doing now over 7, 8, 10 years, and think, dang, there's a lot of pivotal decisions that we made, and maybe some paid off, maybe some didn't, but action is kind of the connective tissue between all of those for sure.
hmm absolutely. And a lot of times as well, when we start to look into the DNA of a successful agency like yours, there's a lot to be said about your team, and you've already brought them up multiple times. I can tell that they're an integral part, obviously, of your success. But rather than kind of go like, how do you hire, or like, what are your non-negotiables? Could you just describe your culture to me? Like, if I was going to come work for you and I'm like, can you tell me what this place is all about? What's it like being on your team? What am I going to
Sure,
experience? What am I going to be expected to do?
sure,
What is your culture?
sure. It's a great question. I think it's one that again we're learning through, right? I've done a lot of things right in this, when you're looking at our culture, and we've made some mistakes along the way too. And I think that it's one that I knew. again, just from talking to other agents that were more successful than me, it's like, hey, you got to have, first of all, you got to have a good team. Well, then it's like, how do you get a good team? How do you keep a good team? And how do you grow a good team? And I think a lot of it is surrounded by the culture and the opportunity that you provide. You have to make it a place that people want to go to work, right? When you think of like, there's this, I talk to my team about this from time to time. There's that Tom Brady commercial, or that interview that he's doing like right after he got drafted, right? He's got long hair and he talks about, he's crying. He's talking about how he got picked, super late in the draft. And he's like, thank God, I don't have to be an insurance agent. Right. And it's just this hilarious like moment. You look of like what the stereotypical like perspective that people have of insurance and insurance agents. I didn't want to be that, right? I didn't want to be boring and slow and mundane. I wanted us to have a really fun opportunity and a really fun environment. And I wanted people to be high fiving and jumping around and have bonuses and promos and prizes and lunches and opportunity for their family too. It just so happened that our industry is insurance, right? And so we tell especially our sales team, we tell them that a lot, right? You got to have the skill of salesmanship. We just happen to sell insurance. You're not an insurance agent, right? Your job is to advise these people. And so, you
Hmm.
know, one thing that I think that we've done right is we've always hired and promoted from within. When it comes to leadership roles, and more like team lead type of roles, we've given people the opportunity that we give everybody, and some have stayed where they're at and enjoy that and they like that, and that's great. Some have, kind of fully maximized the seat that they're in and have come to me looking for more, right? And I think that's just the natural process of growing a business. Some people come to you and do that. Some people are comfortable where they're at, and that's okay. It's nothing wrong with either of those situations. So you
Hmm.
take what they say at face value, and you just kind of analyze like, okay, is this somebody that I want to build my business around, and do I want them to be involved in growing our team and certain aspects of our company, and so we just try to keep that at the forefront of what we do, and it's paid off. And like I say, we're still learning, right? There's things that we've failed at. I've made wrong decisions when it comes to hiring, and we've lost some good people over the years, and that's tough too. But it's always a fail forward mentality. So
Yeah, and I want to do a big pause for the audience as well on something I've been noticing about you, Wyatt, since we started talking, and that is you've said about 5 or 6 times we're still learning. We're learning through it. We're working through it. I always have something else to learn. We make some mistakes along the way. Man, we're figuring it out. Like I'm hearing this, right? And
sure,
I'm thinking, how many agencies out there got to a point, said, I know it all, and said, this is just the way that we're going to operate forever. And there's a lot
sure,
of them, right?
sure,
So I think that's just probably in your nature. But if you're listening in and you're trying to look for what is it about Wyatt? What is it about? Like, why am I stuck where I'm at? And how has he achieved this level of growth? Right. I think one of the first things I look at is that you have such a humble, open, approach to this where it's like, we're still working through it. We're still figuring it out, and it would be easy to walk in here and be like, well, I'm the expert. Like, this is how we do it. And this is the way to do it. But
sure,
I think that's huge. Like when you really look at like your makeup and like the success you've had, I love that you take extreme ownership as well. It's, becoming more and more rare to hear leaders take it on the chin and say like, I screwed this up, or we could have done better with that, or I let my team down. But you take that level of ownership as well, which is
sure.
great. It's
Yeah,
it's really, really cool to see. So I appreciate that about you. And I just again wanted to pause real quick and kind of highlight that for you. And then also, you had mentioned in there, you teach your team to like advise the customer. And so I know we're talking about culture, but that's something I picked up on culturally is like your methodology with your team is like serve people, advise people, be the expert
sure,
versus slam dunk people, get a hat trick. And
sure.
then naturally, as you could see, like his sales speak for themselves. But is that would you consider that advisement of the customer to be something that when you look across like your team's culture and you look at the way that they operate, is that a difficult thing to sort of mold your team into thinking, or is it literally just a decision of like, nope, I'm just going to guide them and they'll pretty quickly get on track with that? Like how difficult is that to enforce?
Sure. Well, really quick, I want to go back to your last comment of,
Yeah.
the idea that we're always learning and growing and things. I think the huge piece of that, and I know I found myself in a situation where I'm like, okay, what if I get burnt out? What if I get tired? What if I just keep beating my head against the wall and I can't figure out how to grow? A lot of that comes from the circle that you're in, the circle that you run in, the people that you hang around, the people that you learn from, right? And the circle that I'm in, there's a lot of agents doing a lot cooler things than I am, right? A lot just business owners in general doing bigger and better things, and I'm learning from them every day. And so, being on, so to speak, that train of leaders and people that are just kind of at the forefront of the business world and more specifically the insurance world, you're following that lead, right? And so I think it's
Mm.
so pivotal to get in rooms like that and find your group of people, right? And then to answer your second question, and that bleeds over to the team too, right? Like if I'm always wanting to learn, my management's always wanting to learn, and we're transparent with that, the team kind of feeds into that, right? That
Mm.
spirit of like, okay, we're never this is not a destination, right? It's a journey, and we can always be better, and there's things we can improve at. And
Beautiful.
so the other piece of your question, from the advisement perspective of the clients, we sell a product that doesn't allow us to be overly transactional and rely on price and get them wrapped up and out the door, right? We're a captive carrier. We have for the most part, depending on the product, we have one offering, right? We have one set of pricing and depending on a few variables, but our product is what it is, right? And so if we don't allow the clients, it's kind of like selling a luxury vehicle versus, the cheapest and the easiest model, right? Or brand or whatever it may be. And so there is a component of like you have to explain the features and the benefits and the extra that you're getting and why it's important, right? And separate price from value. The agents that can't figure out how to do that are the ones that continuously struggle. And we see it, I see it and hear it all the time on the Facebook forums and from people that I consult with and things. It's like, man, we're not competitive. Like, how do I sell this product if we're not competitive? And it's this idea that like, hey, it's tough. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things where you have to learn to separate the price from the value of what you're preaching. And if you give no, you know, um, intrinsic value to your customer and the product that you have, then it is a price conversation. And for us, 9 out of 10 times we're not winning that, right? 8 out of 10 times we're not winning that. And so it's less of something that we have organically built in because we believe in it, and more so something that is a requirement of the business model that we're in. Now, don't get me wrong, we love to do it, right?
Mm.
We love that client relationship. I'm just being transparent. We have to do it. So
So I love that to you. That's so natural, right? You're just like, it's literally like the only thing we can do. Like that's the only option if you want to crush it. But I mean, as I'm
sure,
sure there's plenty out there that don't see it that way and they're kind of stuck, right? They are
sure.
treating it transactionally and that's what they're creating for their customer. And then they lose out when they don't take that approach. So that's something we talk about all the time. And like giving somebody such a good experience and being so thorough and at such a level of expertise and caring enough that they don't even want to go try to start another phone call at somebody else who's going to treat them, like a number. So I really appreciate that feedback. Um, kind of leads me into my next question here, which is more to do with the industry as a whole.
Yeah,
Whether you're within Allstate, which is a pretty tight knit community for the most part, and there's a lot of, buzz that'll go around. If something impacts it, it's like everybody's going to react together, try to figure it out. But then even beyond that, other captive, even into the independent world, I'm real curious what you believe to be the biggest challenge or challenges coming down the assembly line here in the next, let's say 12 to 24 months, the next 1 to
yeah.
2 years, for agencies like you, and like, given your understanding of what you probably need to anticipate, like, how are you preparing for whatever it is you're about to tell me as well?
Sure. Yeah, I'll be honest, I feel very ill prepared to answer this question because, it's something that I rely on again, going back to the people that you run with and hang around. I've got a lot of guys that I talk to on a consistent basis that when it comes to things like this and like technology and you talk about AI and just kind of the trends in the industry, much smarter than I am. I think, one thing that we're really paying attention to is this idea of just when you're at scale, and that's a relative term, right? Like it means something different for everybody.
Mm.
But for us, our true scale and being in a position where we want and having the cash flow, it gives us optionality, and I think that's what we're after, right? And so less of trying to pinpoint and identify where's the market going to go, but more so just being ready for whatever that looks like. And again, it just starts with providing a really good opportunity for our team, um, running a healthy, profitable business, right? Growing the right way and taking care of our customers and just being ready for whatever it may be. Um, so yeah, I could dive deeper into that, but I think it's one of those where I try not to spend too much time because for me, sometimes it's anxiety inducing, right? To think like, oh man, what's it going to
Mhm.
be like in 5 years? But I still have today, I have tomorrow, I have this year, we have goals that we still haven't hit this year and this month, right? So it's a one foot in front of the other type of approach and just being able to pivot when the market and the industry and the carrier says you need to pivot. We've been good at that, right? And so that's our strategy there. So
That's beautiful. No, I actually really appreciate that perspective, and then if you see something that you feel like you need to integrate to grow or adapt, you'll do it when the time comes or with the proper advisement. So,
sure.
man, before we kind of wrap today's, show, one of the areas that we have not touched on that I noticed is, near and dear to your heart and a big part of your life is your family and being a girl dad and having 3 daughters and, being married and sounds like you guys have done business ventures together and things like that.
Yeah.
How in the world do you kind of hold together, running and achieving what you need to do on the agency side versus like having a very fulfilling and like full life with your family as well? Just your own personal kind of approach to that.
Sure. Don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's something that's a constant work in progress.
I love the
it-
broken record on that topic. There's a lot of things I wouldn't want to
yeah,
hear over and over again, but the fact that you're so coachable and you're learning in the
yeah,
position you're in is
yeah,
awesome. So no, I
sure.
appreciate it.
Well, listen, I think that there's something to be said about having imposter syndrome in a relative term in your life in general, and I think that keeps you in a relatively humble state of mind of like, my success is not just my success. There's so many people and scenarios and faith that have played a role in that, and it so on the family side, it is not me, it's we. Absolutely, right? Like, my wife, right? We'll start there. My wife holding it down at home. There's so many things that she does that I can't do and can never do, right? Especially to the level that she does it. My wife is a homemaker and she makes it home, like no doubt. And it's one of those where, you know, we stay on the topic too long, I'll get emotional about it. But she holds it down and I get to come in and be the fun dad. And don't get me wrong, I'm very involved at home and a lot of it's logistics, right? Like bathing and putting people to bed and cleaning up dinner and those kinds of things. But there is a time each day where I feel this like really strong pull to like, okay, hey, the day's about to be over, right? Make sure you connect, make sure you be present, whatever that looks like and feels like. Some days we're better at it than others, but so it starts there and she's on top of lunches and school schedules and piano lessons. And outside of that, we've got a phenomenal family core unit with my parents and my in-laws and they stay very involved. And then, on the business side of things, we've talked about it a handful of times as a team, right? I could absolutely walk away from this agency, go overseas for a month, and things would function just fine. Now, the piece that I have to understand, and this has been a tough lesson for me to learn, is like my own personal anxiety about like I gotta be there, I gotta be involved. It's a control thing, and I'm learning that about myself. Right, I'm 31 years old, and I'm just now learning like and I see it in my daughters. Right, I have to control. I feel like I have to control every situation, every scenario, every outcome. And so learning through that has been really tough for me, but I don't have to, and I don't want to control every situation, right? I've put in a lot of time in the people around me, especially on the business side, to like let them do their job, let them become the person that the customer wants to talk to, right? Let them be better at their job than I am. I can't be all things. And so, yeah, man, I think it's something that I would love to be better at too, and we're figuring it out as we go. So
Thank you for that. No, I really love the perspective on it, and just seeing it. I'm a dad of one. I have one son. He's 8 years old, and
that's awesome.
my wife, runs a business, and then she's involved in a business. So we both run extremely busy lives, but I could definitely relate to like there's certain capacities and things she does that I could never do, and there's an intuition she has about the needs of our
Yes,
kiddo and the household that's
absolutely.
just incredible. So like having that partner first and foremost, I'm hearing from you is such a huge blessing. I think for anybody who can find that in their life and find that real life partner is so big. And
Yeah,
I'm happy for you, man. Very, very happy for you.
appreciate
It's
that, man.
awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Happy for you too.
Thank you. Well, look, I want people to be able to link up with you. And I knew
Yeah,
yesterday when we spoke, you mentioned a very exciting event coming up here in South Florida. And then also, wanted to see your availability for any consulting for anybody who, this tugged on their heartstrings and they're like, man, I need to align with Wyatt. And
sure,
just like you were saying, you ask for help, like some of you might need to link up with Wyatt and get some help too. So
sure.
we can start with the event and just maybe a little bit about what that is, when it is, and what to
Yeah,
expect. And then I'll share out a screen of it for sure while we're talking about it.
yeah, man. So we throw an event every year. It's called the C8 Summit. A group of myself and 7 other agents. This will be our 3rd year doing it. We've had this group together for, I don't know, 5 years now, 4 or 5 years now. And it's exactly what I had mentioned earlier, right? It was a collective of a handful of agents in different parts of the country, different sizes, different levels of production that we got together. Ryan Chao is a good friend, and he's a part of the group, and he connected us all, to be quite honest. I think we all kind of knew who each other, we knew who, I knew who each person in the group was, and we connected at one point, and maybe some people we didn't know, but nonetheless, he kind of brought us together, and it was this sounding board, right? This learning community of like, hey, this is what's working in the industry, this is what's not. Let's all grow together, right? And it has absolutely changed not only my trajectory of the agency, but just the amount of fun and passion that I've been able to have within the industry, and to grow with these guys and become some of my best friends. And so it's so pivotal in my journey. If I look back and I remove that piece from my journey, I would not be where I'm at today. And so we put these events together to try and bring that collective experience to the marketplace in a fun event environment. And it's different than your typical insurance conference, right? Where again, we have this round table, this tight knit round table setup, right? And so the idea there was, okay, if we have 8 presenters, 8 groups of people, it's a smaller group. People can converse a little bit more intimately, ask more specific questions versus like a big conference where you have to raise your hand and ask for the microphone, and maybe you're never called on, right? And so we wanted to provide a more intimate experience. And so that's kind of grown into something bigger now. But yeah, man, we're super pumped. Events in Miami, more to come. There is a wait list out there. It's on my Facebook.
Oh, it's in Miami?
It's in Miami. Yeah.
That's so unfortunate. What a horrible place to have a conference.
I know, it's terrible. We had it in Miami last year and people raved about it. And so took a vote, ended up being in Miami again. And so we're looking early February. So be on the lookout for more details with that, man. But we're super pumped to do that again. So
awesome. Looking forward to it. And lastly, if you've got any room for anybody to reach out and link up with you for some support, some help, maybe even some mentorship or coaching with you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, Wyatt?
Yeah, man. We can give out my email. It's Wyatt Mace at allstate.com. Easiest way to get a hold of me. And so, it's one of those things. I had mentioned this to you yesterday. I love to help people. I love to help agents. I'm kind of full right now with the consulting piece. But people, from time to time, stuff changes and people graduate out of that, or they have to stop for one reason or the other. And so if you're looking for help, just reach out to me. I'm happy to assist. And if that means coaching and consulting, we'll see what we can figure out. If it's just like, hey, here's some pieces of advice relative to what you're dealing with, I'm happy to do that too. So
awesome. Thank you for that. So Wyatt Mace at allstate.com.
Wyatt Mace, Wyatt with 2 T's, Mace at allstate.com.
Perfect. Well, Wyatt, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate truly your time and the fact that you're able to step out from your day and somehow make time for this is amazing. So appreciate everything. Took a lot of great notes. I'm sure that our live audience really appreciated all the golden nuggets from you, and also just your heart. I mean, you wear your heart out there, and really appreciate you as a human. We'll be restreaming this. So whether you guys are watching the live stream or you're watching the rerun, make sure you reach out to Wyatt and show him some love for all the amazing wisdom that he dropped in today and for his time. And then for anybody looking for the next show, you know where to find us. We're here every single Thursday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time on Ask the Experts. And we'll be back next week for another amazing episode. But Wyatt, thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time today.
Absolutely, man. I've had a blast. Appreciate you having me.